Hey, what's up? Leroy from Noisegate. So today I have something a little bit different to show, model samples from Elektron. I picked this up from Facebook Marketplace about 2 weeks ago. Can't remember how much it cost, but wasn't a lot. And I gotta say, this thing is super cool. Elektron dropped this a couple years ago now, and it's sort of like one of Elektron's, entry-level drum machines that sequences or samples. And in comparison to a lot of their range, like the Digitact and the Digitone and the Syntact, it comes in a lot cheaper, but it still retains a lot of that really awesome Elektron style workflow that people who are really in the Elektron world really love. I've certainly been a convert over the last couple of days, or weeks rather, playing with this. Three kind of main reasons. This concept of sample locking, this sort of concept of trigs, and just the general workflow that Elektron has. So in this video, I'm just gonna make a track from scratch with a few samples that I've got here, and just gonna show you kind of the workflow and what I've really been enjoying about it. And I don't know, maybe if you have one as well, or if you're in the Elektron world, you can share with us what you really like as well. So the model samples, it's a sampling sort of sequencer. There's no sampling, like live recording sampling functionality built in, I don't believe, but it more or less just plays back the samples that you have. I've imported a bank of my own samples, and you can see it's a 6-track sampling sequencer thingamajig. So kick drum here, got a little sort of snare drum, open hat, some percussion, bass sound. I've got this kind of melodic chord stab thing here. And being a house head, I'm gonna make a bit of a house groove. So all these samples have come from samples that I have imported via the software, which you can find for free and download. So let's kind of get going. Start with the kick drum, because that's always the best place to start a track like this, anchor the rhythm. And so when I press record, I'm able to use this these buttons down here as a sequencer, right? A 16-step sequencer, which can be expanded to 64 steps using this page button. So let's just plonk some in right now, and cool, pretty straight. But let's kind of like, flip this up a bit from the get-go. I'm gonna put another step there and another step there. Sounds like this. Cool. But I'm going to engage this thing called sort of like per step trig conditions, right? Which is this really strange, ambiguous language, which to many would make no sense at all. But basically what it means is I can make each individual step change or play at different times. So which greatly changes the way that this will sound and give you a lot more dynamics, right, within your beat making. Okay, so I'm going to hold this step down, and I'm gonna turn this knob here that says chance condition or whatever, and I'm gonna twist it, and it's a very tiny little screen here, so you have to really look close, and I hope you can see in the camera. And I'm gonna change it until it gets to, here we go, 2/2, which means that step will play every second cycle. And then this one here, I'm gonna do the same thing and change that until I get to something different, say 4/4, which means that step will play every 4th cycle. No, that's wrong. 1/4 will play every 4th cycle. Yeah. It's confusing, but you kind of get it at first. Cool. So as you can see, those two steps aren't playing every single cycle, they're playing every second and every 4th. So that kind of really changes the dynamic. Now what I'm going to do is I'm also going to hold this step down, and I'm going to change the volume of that as well, so it doesn't hit so loud, so it has a little bit of dynamics. It's more or less like programming in velocity changes. And what you might notice now, if I hold down these two steps, these two parameters light up, and that shows that there's changes per step on that particular step. So it makes it easy to see what steps you've got changed on those particular steps. So that's already really cool. I'm loving that. Let's move on to the snare. All right, so put one there and there. Cool. So it already sounds pretty dynamic just using a 16-step sequence, right? So normally 16-step sequences can be quite, stiff and straight, but already with these trig conditions, it's sort of sounding a little bit dynamic. Let's do some of the same stuff with this snare track on snare 2. Cool. So that's with no trig conditions. I'm gonna change the trig conditions for that step there. I could change it to a percentage, which means it would be like it would trigger at a certain percentage. But I really like this, this condition thing. All right, so 2/3, and let's just change this to, yeah. Cool, so every time it's a little different. And then again, let's change the volume because I don't want it to be as loud as the steps on the upbeat, which is the 5 and the 13, right? Because that's like the real house groove. Change this here. All right, cool. And again, you can see these are the individual parameter locks. That's the word I've been looking, parameter locks. So each time you make a change for a step, it's called parameter locks. That's what I've been looking for. I'm going to introduce you into something that I really love about this. So I've got a snare on this track, but what I can actually do within the sequence is I can add in another sample per step, right? And this is a really unique workflow that you don't really often find on many other samplers, but it's really key to Elektron Model's workflow. So if I hold this step down and press this little wave button, here I can actually go through and find an extra sound to put on that step. So I'm able to effectively have multiple samples within the one track, okay? So let's just go here. So I've got a little rim shot sound there, right? Just on that step. But these two here are the snares, okay? And if you want to change that, you can just go back. Cool, right? Sounding pretty good. Now I might just reduce the volume of that a bit so it's not as loud as the snare. Let's just that. Cool, and let's just, you know what, put a trig condition on it as well so it makes it sound nice and groovy. Great. Move on to the next sound. Let's go the open hat. Cool, got a bit of a vibe about it now. Let's just do this one cool thing that I know how you can do. I'll hold this down and press re-trig. This is super cool, right? So if I go up here and turn it on, and then I keep the rate at 16ths, it will ratchet that step, but just for that step, okay? And then if I click fade and go fade into the negative territory, it will ratchet that step in 16ths, but it will fade it down, right? So let's see how it sounds. Cool, all right? Hit this again. And you can shorten the length of it. Nice, all right? So it gives it that little shuffle, right? These are really amazing little tricks that you can use for beat making to make your tracks sound really kind of dynamic and, you know, have a lot of movement to them, right? Especially when we're just working within a 16-step sequence. Of course, we can duplicate this multiple pages and have a 64-step to really like make it, you know, quite alive. But in this instance, it's a really nice workflow. Cool. Now let's go to this little sound here. This is like a little shaker. Hit the record button, allows us to enter in the steps, and let's just go boom. Now I'm going to hit the function button to mute these sounds and just hear this on its own, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some variation in this with the pitch. What was that phrase I was using before?
Parameter locks.
Parameters?
Pardon?
Something parameters?
Parameter lock. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add some parameter locks for some of these little shakers, but every sort of second step, and I'm just going to change the pitch sort of down and up. And that will kind of give this sort of shaker sound a little bit of nuance as it cycles through, right? So it sounds a little less stiff and has a bit more interest to it. So let's just change these. Okay, So you can see now all of these second steps, they're flashing. That means they've got parameter locks to them. So it kind of goes up and down like that, has a little bit of a flutter to it. And let's just change the decay. Introduce some of the other sounds. Cool. Cool. Great. So just to be clear, whenever you trigger a track, all of these parameters will assign to that track. Okay, so whenever I select the kick, I can change the cutoff filter, the resonance, the decay. I can add reverb and delay. There's only 2 effects, which is totally cool because you don't often need heaps. You've got a lot of control over each of your sounds. It reminds me a little bit of the Volca sample in many ways, but probably more effective programming. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities with just being able to change individual samples and stuff like that per track. Although the Volca sample has 10 tracks and this has 6. Nonetheless, this has sample locking and all these trig conditions. Cool. Move on to this bass line. So if you take the record button off, this means that the sequencer becomes like a little piano. So I can kind of create a little bass line and play these samples like chromatically. And you can assign the step sequencer to play in different keys like major and minor. But the 9 step, that's always like the C. So you can kind of like always get a head around this is the C, although this sample is in a F key. So just bear that in mind. So from here, it's really just kind of having a jam. Now, in this scenario, I've already got this programmed to be a 32 step sequence. So you can see here, there's the page button. And when you play, the page will flash when it's on that page, right? And the cool thing about it is you can have like each track has its own length, right? So this track, for instance, is 32, whereas the kick is 16. So is the hat and the snares, they're all on their own 16 steps, but you could effectively make this longer or shorter to have a bit more of a dynamic, phrasing with your bass lines and melodies. Cool, let's get this. You can record in real time by pressing record and play. This took me ages to work out, by the way. All right, so now it's in live record mode. And then when you press just record on its own, it will show you all the individual steps for that track. And if you want to make any adjustments, you can just take them out and, all that kind of thing. Which is a really great way of, programming these sounds. I can't remember how to clear the steps for just one track though. Every time I do that, it clears the steps for everything. So I might just redo that bass line again. If you know how to do that, hit me up in the comments, for real, because I just can't work it out. It's okay, you don't have to know everything. All right, so I'm gonna manually record this again. You can obviously step sequence these, but in the interests of time, let's just. Now let's move on to the next. Got this little sound here, and I just really want to be quite simple with this. I don't want it to be, too complex. There we go. Nice. All right, cool. So what I want to do is I'm going to hit this button here, and I'm going to go to the second page. Yep. Okay, second page, and this is the second chord stab in that sequence, and I'm just going to add some reverb and some delay just to that one. So it has that little delay tail just at the end of the bar. Yeah, you can hear that. So this whole parameter locking is really, really great. Might add a little bit of filter to this track. So if you don't hold down a step and you make adjustments to that track, it makes it globally to that track. All right, cool. Now the last thing here is the swing. The swing on this thing is really good. It sounds super groovy when you just add swing, even just globally. There's a button here that means you can actually apply swing to individual elements, which maybe we can do in this scenario just to the hats. You don't need to swing it a lot because a little is enough. Yeah. But now I'm just gonna go function. Function's like the shift button, it's like the modifier, and hit this button here and turn swing on, and I'm just, and turn it up to like 55%. So this is without swing, which already sounds mad groovy, but let's just juice that up to 5. Let's go a bit more. Yep. Cool, yeah, that's enough. Yeah, and there's one last thing that I really like about this. It kind of pertains to being able to incorporate this into like a performance kind of scenario. And you have this thing where you can actually temporarily save a pattern in its current state. So if I go temp save, all right, so this pattern is saved as is, and I can go ahead and make a whole bunch of adjustments to this and really mess it all up, and then come back to that original saved pattern that I just have. And that's by hitting the pattern and function button at the same time. So let's just work this out. So if I'm just jamming and I hit track, and then pattern and function brings me back to that track again. Alright, so you can kind of go ahead and really mess it up, kind of make a bit of a build up, bit of a drop. Yeah, it's a really unique feature. More drum machines need to have that. Cool, anyway, that's just a few of my insights into why I really like this thing. Again, I didn't get sent this from Elektron. I picked it up on Facebook Marketplace for a couple $100, and I just kind of wanted to lay down a few of the reasons why I think it's been really fun and how it sort of integrates into my workflow. If you're an Elektron person and you're kind of like got your head around the whole workflow, let us know what you really like about it. But yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Elektron.